All right, Chris, we are live, but before we get going, of course, because we got to make sure all the connections between StreamYard and your website, your profile, YouTube, and all that good stuff come together. This is a little bit of our chit chat time. So, how you doing this morning? How you doing?
I'm doing fine. It's been a busy morning.
Yes, has it good or bad?
Uh, all good.
Oh,
No
good.
complaints. No complaints today. How
I
about
like it.
you?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. I could complain vehemently, but nobody's going to listen. Nobody's going to care. So why bother complaining?
There's no point in that. Though I must say, I mean, my morning's been. We're going to talk about this today, but it's been a lot of disruption and turmoil.
Disruption and turmoil. You gotta like that. So that's what we're talking about here.
So,
So we're a minute into it. I hope all the connectivity and connections are happening. We are talking about disruptive product launches in
yep,
the age of AI. So that's what we're talking about. And
yep.
Chris comes with the disruptive product launch skill sets, and I can fill in some of the blanks on the AI skill sets. So this is going to kind of be a mixed.
Well, I kind of love this topic, David, because I mean, you're the AI guru, not I. But I mean, I'm seeing it. It's impacting the med tech field and life sciences field all over the place.
Oh
I mean,
God,
kind of
yes,
everywhere, and it is kind of everywhere.
that's
Is
right. It's
you know,
everywhere.
it's, people don't, and I know you. I mean, I'm using it. I use it every day now. So
Yep. Use AI for everything. Co-intelligence, Ethan Mollick. Use AI for everything. One of the four laws. And then you see whether it can function efficiently and effectively for you.
yep.
So we're going to talk first about AI in general, right? Is that what we're thinking?
Yeah, and I'm kind of going to ask you. You're the expert on that. I kind of reflect back on you on that. So, I mean, you've been kind of the leader and the thought leader in the field for over a year now. At least that's what
February 2023 is when Laura and I and SoftEd began to push into this space, given what we saw with OpenAI's November
I.
2022 launch of this amazing system, right?
Yeah.
So when I
So
talk about it, I talk about it as not just a technology. I talk about it as a disruptor, right?
yeah,
A business model disruptor. And I'm old enough to have remembered everything that went on with the internet world. From the crazy CLEC, world where the telecommunications environment was deregulated, and a
yep,
ton of money went in there.
yep,
From there to bandwidth, power, speed, going to the last mile. From there, IP, internet,
yeah,
clicks, the bubble bursting,
yes,
and then all the changes that occurred after the bubble bursting. And what you saw was massive disruption in how we work,
yep,
how we're organized and structured. And I call it the boiling frog dilemma because it just doesn't happen overnight.
yes,
The
yes.
frog dies when you boil it slowly but surely. And this is what is happening. Even though it's going to go faster than the internet bubble as a disruptor, and it
You think
already is
so?
doing so. Yeah, it already is going faster.
I think so too.
But it's still going to be a boiling frog because you're going to turn around. You're going to say, "What? Come on!
Yeah.
How many conversations have you had, Chris, when someone says, "Oh my gosh, what would I do without GPS?" But we both live without it. GPS is a
Oh, right.
internet IP technology, right?
Yes.
How many times do you think when you're watching TV, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm watching TV this way"?
Yeah.
Internet.
Yeah.
How about stores, shopping centers, buying things? Think about the profound difference, right? So we
But
got to
Dave,
see
can I
AI as
ask you a question?
yeah. Go ahead.
So, in all of those other examples, there seemed to be like, when you talk about the internet bubble, there was this big hype, and then we kind of had, and then
It
we had
popped,
this bust.
and then you
So we had
readjust.
this hype, then we had the bust, and then we actually had the boom.
Well, here's the thing: the technology and the bus, the technology didn't stop. The money making stopped, and they just had to move money from one area to another area. At the end of the day, these VCs are used to burning cash, right? And they know that for
Yeah.
every area they burn, they're going to grow, and they know the math of it, and they follow the math of it. So when you look at the dot com burst, it really had nothing to do with the technology; it had everything to do with the money, the model, how you make money. The model of clicks and
Oh,
eyeballs
okay.
died, and it got converted to the idea of stealing the phone system capabilities from the circuit switched. It turned into e-commerce, and that's where the
But,
e-commerce
but
thing started. And a ton of
right.
more money was made over that instead of just a click. advertising eyeballs.
Yeah, but so I remember I was there at the .com bus with a company out of Silicon Valley, and so I think what you're saying is that the technology is still developing and growing, but the bust is around the business
The
model.
bust is around the business model, always around the business model, not the
Right,
technology. Now,
right,
here's what happens: some great technologies don't prove out to have a strong business model, so they're
yeah,
never really talked about in terms of revenue, but they might be running the internet
yeah.
or they might be running something else, but they're not part of the money making menagerie, for lack of a better
Right.
word.
And that's where all the hype lives. It's that translation from the technology to the business model and finding that and we
What's
get out of
ultimately going to make money with this, right? What's ultimately, so
it.
there's two schools of thought, right? There's a school of thought with AI that it's going to be a productivity enhancer. So
Yeah,
employees will be much more productive. And
yeah,
productivity drives economics hugely. It basically drives profit.
yep,
But it
sure.
also adjusts jobs and what type of work they do and where R&D goes to and how R&D is spent, right? So we know there's this enhancement, but there's also this pure automation play, the agentics play. And this thing is that how many of these knowledge work jobs can you just purely automate
Right,
with multiple agents communicating with each other to perform the function that a knowledge worker would have performed? So
right.
those are the two kind of schools of thought that are going on.
That's not the basic AI. That second piece is not, but that's taking the basic AI and building it into tools that replace whole functions
Yeah,
within.
that's the agentic side. Basically, you can create agents on top of agents on top of
Yeah,
agents to be able to operate functions that humans used to do, but do it
right.
automated. So I'm engaging with something, an agent, maybe it's
Yep,
going to be travel, and that the AI agent does it all as if I don't even realize that that's not an agent,
yep,
aka a human agent.
right.
So this is a business model disruptor first. From a technology standpoint, the algorithms were there, the predictive analytics were there. It's just a change in how it presents to itself. It now presents in a natural language way. So machine
Oh,
learning algorithms we
got it.
didn't look at. We just got the results based on being
Right.
on Facebook and getting certain things served to us,
Yep,
or being in our CRM and being told this person's hot, so you should call them.
yeah,
What's occurred now, it's the same concepts of the algorithms, the predictive analytics are very similar. It's just that we're getting something fed to us that we can actually engage with.
yep,
We
yes.
can actually write with it. We can
Right,
actually read with it. You can actually listen to it. You can
right,
talk to it. You can create video. So
right.
first, it's a business model that you have to be looking at, and this is where you live. You live,
Well, the
and
business
AME
model where I
lives in.
live.
Yeah, it's business
Yeah,
model. That's why I think people now need AME so much, agile market entry,
right.
because it's just such a huge disruptor of how I'm going
Yeah.
to make money.
Well, what I'm seeing in med tech in that regard is a couple things. One is people are coming out with tools that are using AI.
Yep.
For instance, I worked with a client a while back that's using it in brain models.
Hmm.
Looking at brain tumors and pulling all the data that from scans, from functional feedback, and pulling that into all one model that can be used in a surgical tool. So and that's going to completely change the way brain surgery is conducted.
That's right, and the front end and the
And,
back end. So,
and that
are you going to buy a subscription for that instead of buying a robot or buying sutures or buying a
right,
training class on how
right.
to do it or buying another couple of researchers who are going to process information? Are you going to buy a subscription to the algorithm so you could better do your surgery?
I think in that
Your
perspective,
customers are going to have to change their mindset, Chris. I'm going to buy, like when I'm doing some work for a med tech company now. It's amazing to think that one of the elements is selling a subscription to a database.
subscriptions, right? Well, that's not too far off from the business model because it's not too far from the razor blade model
It's
in
not.
healthcare. It's not a big step from that. But what I think is more disruptive is that it's going to completely change the way brain surgery is performed in some sense. And how do you and the healthcare system, medical system's not designed with a business model around how brain surgery is going to change. So how do you transition from the current model for how we pay for healthcare and pay for brain surgery to include these
Oh,
technology.
now you're talking about the secondary effects. Like, did you really think the effect of the internet was going to be retail establishments
Yeah,
being
right.
torn apart? Or here's the thing: did you ever think about the effect of the internet being thousands upon thousands of specialty retailers?
Yeah,
I mean, we
right,
could get
right.
so many cool things now
Well,
from
yeah,
specialty
just
resale
people
shops.
that are using eBay's to build that run the whole
Yeah,
business off eBay. I
cool
think
stuff
so.
that you would never be able to touch because it was all department store model based on inventories and how much stuff they could choose.
Right.
So I think you're going to end up with choices and options that people are going to have to understand and see and get, and that's going to affect, like you said, the medical
Yeah,
coding,
the
medical.
thing that's a little bit different, I think, in the med tech life sciences world is that we have very fixed financial structures we operate within that are hard to change.
Mhm.
And how do you fit something that's so disruptively different from a clinical medical standpoint into the existing structures
It's
of
going
the
to happen when the customers want it. So think about this. My daughter just went to a virtual CVS emergency clinic.
yeah, sure, sure,
Wonderful example. I mean,
right,
CVS and Target is focused on the many clinics like a mad person.
yep,
And I think those are some of internet based, but also mindset shifts based that
completely,
you're going to see a company that's going to come out with a different way of getting medicine that's going
yep,
to be less intrusive, less focused on, less having less bodies and people involved. And they're going to be able to
right.
offer a lower cost option for you to go in and get a surgical procedure done, getting a test done.
Yeah, but here's one of the challenges that's going to lie within that, David. Is are you going to pay? Is it going to be a direct consumer play because there's really no.
No, the insurers are going to have to come second. This is what's going to happen. Yeah,
And
consumers are going to go to
that's
it.
really tricky.
I think it's going to happen is consumers are going to come to it first because the cost benefit is there. It's like, oh, I go for a certain number of dollars and get it. I'll just pay out of pocket and I'll get all
Yep.
this thing. I'll get all these things done. Then the insurers will start seeing this, and then the business models will adjust. But the
So,
problem
but
is that
I
the
see
unit
a lot of.
economics change. Then remember,
So
here's
we've
the thing.
already seen some of that starting to take place in the digital health transition, and that has been a huge boom and bust because we have a lot of people coming from outside of healthcare, outside
Yep,
the medical field, using their technology background to bring out these digital health products, but they
that's
don't fit
IP
in.
and data. That was all IP data driven. That was internet. So all the EMR systems is a function of the internet. You guys finally utilizing the internet to capture information and data.
Exactly, and that's what digital health. But what a lot of the hype was is they didn't figure out the business model, the economic model. They're figuring out the value proposition from a functional, technical, clinical standpoint. But if you don't have the business model, those companies fail. I mean, there's been huge failures in this space because of it, and I think that that's going to be a challenge. The other thing, and I want this is I think the other thing I think is really interesting about the AI is oh god, now I completely lost. So the one thing is it's gonna this piece around making individuals and companies more efficient. It is gonna make startups much more efficient. And
Yes, you're going to be able to compete faster and more
you
effectively, but the founders got to understand how to use the technology. So,
they gotta understand, but
and
they
also we do
will.
have to think about regulation here. HIPAA causes a lot of challenges within the AI world
Yeah.
per se, because AI works best with a bunch of disparate information.
Yes.
The more information it can pull, like if you can pull the medical records from every single person, and they can look at trends that we would have
Yep.
never really seen before, associated with early stage cancers, early stage diabetes. You could
Yep.
pull in food habits, eating habits of a large group of people coming in, and you'll start seeing very strong statistical things that know, how they currently do their casework and they do
Sure.
their what's it called, the research studies, 100 people, 500 people. AI could blow that out of the water.
Yeah, we're already seeing some evidence of that.
So now that what is that, then how does the business model come? Because what happens is the VC money comes first. And that's what's going on now with OpenAI. That's
Yes,
what's going
yes,
on
sure,
now with Anthropic. So
sure.
OpenAI is it's easily $200 billion of investment money. Anthropic, like at least Anthropic, Claude, at least $500 billion of money. So what happens? The money comes first, and most of the money has gone to the LMM systems that
Yep.
then drive this, right?
Yep.
Now the money's starting to say, okay, what are the practical use cases and opportunities? And this is the same thing that happened in the internet. The first thing the money did is it went to create the bandwidth, both in the ground and in the air, to be
Yep.
able to get you access to this stupid thing called the internet.
Yep. Yep.
You know, that was then once we got that, then the money went to the practical use cases associated with how we're going to drive, how we're going to use this.
And that's
So,
where we failed the first time on the internet, and the second time we got it right.
the
Internet
second time we got it right. The first time was just
1.0 was just a mess, and 2.0 we actually started building models that work, right?
yeah. Then you start looking at use cases like phone systems. Can I connect my phone system together with my internet and save money associated with not having this huge
Yep.
circuit switch PBX? And that's what killed Nortel, and
Yeah.
that's what killed Lucent, and that's what made Cisco the company.
What if we could skip 1.0 and go straight to 2.0 and instead of just pushing stuff out and throwing money at it and hoping we get lucky when we throw it up the guns, drive it from a use case specific right out of the gate.
Well, right now, I'll tell you, that's what so when I tell my story after, being in the space since 23, and now it's 25, and we have 9 courses, conferences, I can tell you that ultimately I'm learning it's becoming a use case oriented solution.
But every disruptive innovation is that, David. It's always been that way. It's just
so you have to start looking at how you teach a startup to start testing different use case scenarios.
Yes, and that's exactly what agile market entry is. And that's I'm doing that with a client right now in the neuronal signaling space, where we're looking at electrical signals between neurons inside of organoids, and we're launching the product, and we're not just throwing stuff out there and hoping the market. We're actually doing the work to figure out those early use cases and what the problem are the market's trying to solve to address those use cases today. And we're going to go with a very focused launch around specific use cases that we can build a repeatable product.
It's interesting, Chris. In my industry, we are used to title drives everything. The content stays stable. You just adjust pieces of content based on title, and that's what people take. But in this Gen AI space, it's becoming very apparent that you have a group of people that do certain functions. Their functions are different, so you have to be use case driven, where you have to figure out the use cases, then build the content for them based on their use cases. Now, 80% of that content's still static. You're pulling it from your trove of stuff, but the other 20%, which makes up the biggest amount of value, Pareto's efficiency, is the customized stuff that you get from digging into their use cases.
Yes.
So it's really interesting. I'm seeing that. So let's look at AME then. So from an AME perspective, how is the use case driven mindset established? How do you go about putting that together?
So I mean the entry point. So if you look at AME, there's 2 fundamental things we're trying to do with AME. One is we're trying to avoid the mistake of premature scaling, which in the analogy of today was internet 1.0.
Billions and billions of dollars were prematurely scaled on hundreds and thousands of internet eyeball companies.
So and we're going to do the same thing with AI to some extent. We did the same thing in genomics. We did the same thing in personalized medicine. We see this with new alternatives. So first, one component is avoiding that premature scaling, knowing that that's probably the biggest mistake companies do. So let's actively avoid it. Let's not spend money before let's not spend $1 when we're only going to get a 10-cent return on it. Let's spend $1 when we're let's spend 10 cents to get a 10 cents return to get started. And when we get to the point where we can spend $1 and get $10 return, then let's scale. So that's and then the second point of it is in order to scale, you have to have a repeatable sales process, right? And that's a sequential events that have to happen over a period of time that you figure out what your repeatable sales process. The very entry point to the repeatable sales process is figuring your market entry point. Yeah. Most people call it beachhead market. I actually don't like that term because it's not. The market entry point is very specific. It's who your early adopter and innovator is, what that profile is, and what's the fundamental problem that you're solving for them.
That's interesting because what I'm finding now with the AI side is where is the entry point? Some cases it's the IT person. Some cases it's like a chief of staff person who has a, and so the entry points are really interestingly different than they are in typical training.
And the problem for each of those is going to be different, and the specific use case attached to that problem is going to be very specific. So, in answer to your question, that's how you make it use case driven.
Yeah.
Most times when we're launching technologies, especially when we have a lot of money behind you driving the growth, we don't look at it this way.
What about the fact that medtech, since it's so expensive to build stuff, shouldn't some of this mindset be around pre-build?
Oh, so and I just had a dialogue on LinkedIn from someone telling me, I shared my playbook with them and talks about all the stuff you and I talk about. And they said, well, a lot of that gets delayed in medtech because of the product development life cycle, the regulatory, the clinical studies. And that's all. That is, I didn't say this to this gentleman, but that's flat out wrong thinking.
Yeah.
If you don't know what your problem is that you're going to solve for your customer and who your customer is before you start building your product, you're going to build the wrong product.
Well, this is the big problem in medtech right now. Is what's happening is people really don't know what it is that they want, and when you can, and I think that's part of the problem.
But that's not the question you ask. You don't ask people what they want. You do real customer discovery and figure out what their problems are, and then you map their problems to the solutions that you can potentially deliver.
Well, then in AI, it becomes down to speed, right? It comes down to, better patient outcome based on quicker results, based on more accurate early stage results. That's really, so the couple of companies we were talking about, the Optellums of the world and the Circulogenes of the world, they're just showcasing trying to get results quicker and quicker in earlier stages using AI technology.
But there's a challenge in that, David. So first of all, let's look at the the oncology case. I think the one was lung cancer. It was early
Optellum. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's no really early identification of lung cancer. Well, you know what? There's really not a reimbursement curve, code to reimburse for an earlier, really early screening tools for this. So what's the business model that's going to drive it as you then build those reimbursement curves? Well, first of all, build the the medical economic models to validate the reason for an insurance company to pay for that, and then take the time to develop.
What do you think about the business model that pharma's embraced that I know Intuitive Surgical is looking at, which is going direct to customer, as relates to Optellum, I go to the direct to customer, man, there's a new test out there that you can do that will give you such a better chance of knowing whether you have lung cancer or not. You should go take that test. Go to the doctor and say, I want that test.
Yes.
And I'll pay out of the pocket.
Yeah.
And enough people go, then the insurance companies are going to be losing money. That's to me is where, as it relates to your world, that instead of talking to doctors and nurses, talking to actual patients and what people want, I think is going to give more opportunity for growth.
David. So it's still for Intuitive Surgical, the patient's not going to be the one that probably drives that.
How about that? No, think about this. I want to have, not more than I've learned, I'm only going for robotic surgery. I am going to go to the hospital and then I'm going to say, do you do robotic surgery? If you don't, I'm not doing it. Like if you're doing laparoscopic, oh no, I want the Intuitive robot doing my whatever surgery it is. I just did a fully robotic heart transplant at the VA in Houston.
There you go.
So I would tell you personally that if someone had enough information to know that it takes a doctor 20 surgeries to become really good in robotics and 200 surgeries to become good at laparoscopic, you're going to robotic.
Yep.
So I just think there's some power there.
Intuitive's been brilliant about that. They very early on marketed they have had novel marketing techniques very early on.
Yeah, and it's smart and it works.
And now they're transitioning. Well, yes and no. So, David, they're not the experts, and they've gotten very good at it. There's two fields of medicine where they're experts in direct-to-consumer payments. One is plastic surgery, and the second one is ophthalmology. Those are the two industries. So if you got, those are the ones that have mastered direct-to-consumer payment
Oh,
for different
ophthalmology, yeah,
procedures.
LASIK. I mean,
So
God,
in ophthalmology, it's LASIK. There's premium IOLs. There's now a
mhm.
lot of dry eye technology. So those are the areas where you go to find the expertise. So if you're a company in the med tech space, and you're looking to do direct to consumer, and you're not in one of those two specialties, you better go to experts from that area that know how to deliver. But
Because
yes, I think
let's put
direct
it
to
really simple
consumer is
here.
a very, very valid.
If AI allows you the earlier diagnosis and better diagnosis, it costs us, it costs healthcare and it costs doctor money.
Correct, but
They
so
don't want early diagnosis. Do they really want early diagnosis?
so that's so the question, not the question is whether they want it. So wanted is one question. That's kind of the clinical human side of it. The second question is who's going to pay for it and how's it going to get paid for it. And as soon as you get a diagnostic test, and these diagnostic, these genomics, genetic tests, and now the AI tests, they're going to be in the thousands. Most of them are in the thousands of dollars. So you have a much smaller market entry point. I'm not saying it's not valid, but you better understand how to enter that market and how to do it, what your market is, how to target that market. You're
Mhm.
not going to do a broad marketing across the country. You're going to go to very specific markets, where there's enough high income individuals that you can target and start establishing yourself in the market. And then maybe, typically to transition from that to a payer system where you actually get the insurers on board, that's probably a 5-year process from that launch. So you better have a plan on how you're going to launch the product, how
Yep.
you're going to get early traction with direct to consumer, and then have a plan on how you're going to navigate over those next 5 years to growth and funding to able to get to
And you
get to
have to
where the
understand how
payers
AI
actually want.
works in order to tie AI back into the solution that you're offering as well, I would think. I mean, they need to like one of the things I'm concerned about is a pure play AI tech company coming into this space without understanding the medical space.
Well,
But I also am
we've
concerned
already
about a
seen
medical
that.
company trying to do it without any AI understanding.
Yeah, it's interesting. So the first scenario we've already seen, digital health has done that. And we've seen a lot. It's we've had typical boom bust,
Yep.
hype bust, and now we're starting to see some traction
Oh
there.
yeah, I see Epic. I see Epic or Allscripts anywhere where I go. It's an Epic or Allscripts system.
Yeah.
Doctors usually using a pen. They're typing in immediately into the system, and then
Well,
the information they can pull out is just incredible now. But now
those
think about
I
that overrode with AI.
oh yeah. Well, so here's the other thing that I thought is interesting. I think is interesting to take a couple minutes to talk about. I'm going to kind of shift the conversation on this for a second. And we started alluding to this a little while ago. And here's one of my big things I think is going to happen with AI is it's going to enable startup companies in the med tech space to move faster on the marketing side. Because the one place where AI really is working well right now is the things that you and I are using it for marketing tools, for doing
You
this
can do content marketing. You do video
content,
chopping up. You can
but
create video.
also very, very targeted messages. I forget what's the term for the account-based marketing, account-based sales, where you're actually doing marketing to a specific individuals based on their, their
Their
profile.
profile. Yeah, you can. You
You're
can.
going to see startup companies embrace this, and that's and what how they're already disrupting with their technology with big companies. You're going to see that accelerate even faster. So I think one of the other things that has to happen is big companies, they either got to figure out how to embrace and introduce disruptive technologies, because they're going to be, if they don't embrace and become a leader in disruption, they're going to be disrupted so fast they're not going to be around.
That's
You know,
my
where,
bigger concern is that spin out type scenarios are going to have to happen with some of these bigger companies. And Talon's kind of like that too, with regard to Intuitive's investment in them, is that they're going to have to look at ways to adopt, to try to bring disruptive AI solutions without being part of the behemoth. Because what you're talking about here for me is you've got this behemoth that's tied to regulatory, it's tied to chargebacks with insurance companies. So it's already set in a
yep,
box that every new thing you're going to say no to because you can't figure out the model to
yep,
pay for it.
yep,
So
yep.
to do disruption there is it's so challenging. So yeah, this place is right for a VC to come in across different areas of medical care and say, let's test out multiple AI solutions in these spaces, see which one scales.
Yeah. And you're gonna, but yes, I think that, and I think that's gonna only, I think the AI is just gonna accelerate that disruption we're already seeing in the medical space. And whereas medical companies, large medical companies, have kind of been protected from this because of the regulatory environment, the reimbursement environment, it's been a little, it's a little harder to disrupt medicine. Whereas the SaaS world, and
Oh, you can blow that stuff up in a heartbeat. Yeah,
it's overnight.
there's no regulation. It's a wild, wild west.
It's a
I
wild
think
west.
that's the key for your space is as agile market entry gets into play here, the issue becomes, it's going to be faster and easier for those folks to market,
Yeah.
startup using AME. They might go direct to customer more. And if they go direct to customer more, we do know that can work.
Yep, we do, and it
And we
does
know it
work.
can change markets completely.
And it's a way to enter markets where the big boys don't play right now and get and establish themselves in the marketplace. So then as the market shifts, this is classic Clay Christensen, the innovator's dilemma, where they come in at a not the in this case it won't be the low end, it'll be the top end of the market, but they just take a small niche of it where the big boys aren't playing and they're not paying attention, and all of a sudden they're now taking over the whole market because they've got mind share with all the providers.
I could see this. I could see a community health AI organization. Anybody who's not worried about sharing their
Yep.
information would go into the database. They become part of the community of service. And then
Yep.
I can go in and using these tests like the Optalum test and all these other tests across multiple profiles of people say, am I going to have a chance to get diabetes? Am I going to have a chance to get my urology situation? Where I can just go in and have all these pre-screenings across multiple data points and see where I stand.
Yep.
I mean, I pay money. I pay good money for that.
People are already paying good. I mean, that's what a lot of concierge medicine is being built around this right now.
But
And
yeah, but imagine if you
has
could, the
been.
bigger pool of people you can bring
Yep.
in, the more powerful AI would be able to start doing
Yep.
and seeing the trends. I mean, it's an amazing tool to see trends across
Yep.
large groups of
Oh,
people, very specific.
and that's where the diagnostic tools like the ones we've talking about, that we've talked about, in the brain space or in the lung cancer space, that's what they're using it for, is they can see these patterns and see these and identify the pace, these early cases of the high likelihood to be cancer versus the ones that
The
aren't.
earlier you touch it, the cheaper it's going to be, man. It's the same in IT software. The earlier you touch the problem, the cheaper. I mean, the cheaper it's going to be, both, and then lack of infection.
Yep.
Anyways, we're way below. We're way over our time.
Yeah,
Great
we're
conversation. There are lots of stuff we were able to talk about there, big boy. I really appreciate it. You got a few other sessions coming up here, so
Yeah, so today was we were just kind of riffing today, which was kind of fun, and that's always fun. The next couple sessions, the next session is with Richie Bavasso, who's a serial digital health entrepreneur. We're gonna be talking about what the common failures in digital health companies over his experience. He got into the game really early on in late 1990s, early 2000s. And then after that, we got Kim Norton and Addie Rembaum. Kim's coming back, and we're gonna, do medtech reimbursement for the advanced course. We're gonna dive deep into some real reimbursement aspects of market entry. So
excellent. Well, that's a great commercial. Chris, thank you so much for your time.
yep.
Talk to you.